Minneapolis police chief just gave disgusting gift to her precious Muslim cop who killed woman. Last week, an unarmed Australian woman was murdered in cold blood by a Somali immigrant police officer. This tragic event has thrust the policies and procedures that are in place to screen our most trusted public servants back in the spotlight. Mystery and unanswered questions surround the perplexing case as law enforcement continues to investigate the unspeakable crime. However, the more they dig into the senseless murder, the case only becomes more bizarre. At the moment, the most pressing question is what was the motive or intent behind Officer Mohammed Noor's sudden shooting of Justine Damond, and of course, why was his body camera not turned on? While Damond's fiancé, family, and friends wait for those answers, the Minneapolis police chief just gave Noor a sick pat on the back. As information continues to trickle in surrounding the tragic death of Justine, there are just more questions than answers. Instead of the mainstream media and politicians in Minnesota demanding that justice is done, they appear to be covering for the Muslim cop. That is obvious when those who know Noor described the police officer as not fond of blacks or women and as nasty, irritable, and very jumpy. That does not sound like a person that needs a badge and a gun, right? When Noor's neighbor, Chris Miller, was interviewed concerning the horrific shooting, his answer surprised everyone. Miller was quoted as saying, "When they say a policeman shot an Australian lady, I thought, oh, but then when they said who it was, I was like, okay." If Noor's neighbor had this thought about him, then certainly those in his department did as well, and they kept him on the force so they did not appear Islamophobic. Which makes sense after what Minneapolis Police Chief Jani Harto has said about Officer Noor. According to 9 News, the policeman who shot Australian woman Justine Rusczyk was well suited to be on the street. Minneapolis Police Chief Jani Harto has said, Mohammed Noor shot Rusczyk in the stomach as she approached his police car to report hearing a possible rape in Minneapolis on Saturday night. Chief Harto said the death of Ms. Rusczyk should not have happened but defended Noor's decision not to switch on their body cameras. The officer does have due process and it's my role to ensure due process is followed so that justice can be served, Chief Harto said at a press conference hours ago. This officer completed that training very well. He was very suited to be on the street. She said it was not yet second nature for officers to turn on their body cameras because they had only had them for 8 months. Chief Harto also explained why she had not yet spoken publicly about Ms. Ruszczyk's death. Nearly a week after it happened, I was backpacking in the mountains and it made it very challenging to return, she said. It was my personal time away. She defended her decision to not return to Minneapolis immediately after. There is seldom a good time for a chief to be away, she said. But I do plan my personal time around events that require my presence. Although I wasn't here physically for a few days, I'm always the chief, and was in constant communication with my team. Chief Harto said she had not yet spoken with Noor. So, let's get this straight, shall we? People had noticed that Noor was jumpy and easily set off, but somehow to this police chief, Noor was perfectly suited for the job. I am quite sure that Justine's family would beg to differ in that evaluation. Noor was obviously a part of some hire a Somali program and did not bother to make sure he was actually suited for the job. Not only that, but Noor had already racked up several complaints when he was only 2 years on the force. Now, I am not trying to tell anyone how to do their job, but having 3 complaints in 2 years would suggest an issue, right? Sadly, this is not that surprising. Minneapolis has prided themselves in being a liberal city that is full of diversity and tolerance. For years, they have committed themselves to multiculturalism and have taken in a large Somali population to boot. Many of these Somali refugees and immigrants have expressed their deep loyalties to ISIS and other terrorist groups. At the moment no one is sure if Officer Noor has any ties to terrorist groups overseas, but let's say it would not be a real shocker. Even if Noor does not have any ties, this murder should wake up those on the police force to focus on better screening processes. Those who wear the badge and who are immigrants need to be scrutinized even more vigorously than anyone else. Noor needs to be held accountable for his actions, but also all those who put him in the position to murder Justine in cold blood.